Okay, rounding to one significant figure. This is a really important topic because this is the rule that you need to apply when you are estimating. It's very often in GCSE mathematics that you will get a question which says estimate the answer to this, and you will get no marks really unless you're using this rule to round your numbers. The rule is pretty simple to begin with, but then once you get down to some decimal numbers, people do sort of start to lose the track. So we'll just do a few simple numbers to begin with, and then we'll have a look at some decimals and where you might go wrong. So we're going to have a go at rounding each of these numbers to one significant figure. So I'm going to take the number here, and over here I'm going to write down what I round it to. So this 3,428, the thing about rounding to one significant figure, you've got to first of all identify your first significant figure, and significant figures are any digits at the start of your number which are not zeros. So if I identify the first significant figure, the first significant digit in my number is the 3. The reason it's the most significant is because it's worth the most. That 3 is worth 3,000. All of the other ones are less than that, 420 and 8. But the 3 is in the thousands column. It's the most significant number there. It tells you most about the size of this number. And once you have identified your first significant figure, which is in the thousands column in this case, that tells you to round this number to the nearest 1,000. So if you round this to the nearest 1,000, is it closer to 3,000 or is it closer to 4,000? It's closer to 3,000, and you've done it. If we have a look at this second one, 791, again the most significant, the first significant figure in this number is the 7 there, and that's in the hundreds column. So we're going to round this to the nearest 100. Is it closer to 700 or 800? This time it's 800. Next up we have 1024, again the first significant figure, thousands column, so we round to the nearest 1,000. In this next one, 40,816. Identify your first significant figure. This is in the 10,000s column. So we're rounding to the nearest 10,000. So we've got to think to ourselves, right, is this closer to 40,000 or is it closer to 50,000? Check the next digit. It's closer to 40,000. This one here, again, closest to 1,000. The first significant figure, the most significant figure, was in the thousands column. Now we're getting on to some which people will start to find a bit more tricky. So this one here, 17, probably should be okay. The first digit is in the tens column, so we round it to the nearest 10. Hopefully you can see that that's going to go to 20. Is the nearest 10 to 17. The next one, units. People normally round these correctly as well, actually, when you've got units, because they just look at the next one and say, right, nearest whole number. Well, that's correct in this case. The first significant figure was that 9 there, okay, and it was in the units column, and therefore we round to the nearest unit. And again, on this one, the units column is the 7. So what we do, we round to the nearest unit like that. Now we get to the bit where people do start to have some difficulty. The thing about significant figures is that we don't count this 0 to be significant. It's not really telling us about the size of the number other than giving us what's called a placeholder. So this 0 is here just to mark out the position of the decimal point. It's not telling us the size or anything because there's nothing in that column. The first number which is telling us the size of this number is that one there, and it's in the tenths column. So this is like rounding to one decimal place, and when we rounded in the previous videos to one decimal place, we put a box around it like that, and we said, right, is this going to be 0.9 or is it going to be 0.10? Well, you can't have 0.10, so it's 1.0. It's 0.9 or 1.0. And I hope you can see by looking at the next digit that this one is going to be 0.9. Let's have a look at this one again. We ignore the zeros at the start of a number. They're not telling us anything about its size other than its sort of relative size. This number here, the first significant figure, is in the tenths column. So what we're going to do is we're going to round to the nearest tenth. Again, put the box around that. So we're thinking, okay, this is probably 0.6, but let's just check the next number. Oh, it's a 7. That means we have to round up. So I'm no longer thinking 0.6. I'm thinking, right, I'm going to round this number up by 1. The number in the box is 0.6, but this tells me to round it up. So I'm going to go for 0.7. And then we get to this number here, right? And again, you can ignore this 0 and this 0. In fact, you can ignore any zeros at the start of a number. Your first significant figure is always the first non-zero digit. So there we are, we're in the hundredths column. Going to round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, that's sort of where I want to chop my number off. So I want to write 0.08, but I just need to check. Yes, I can write 0.08. The next digit was not 5 or more. And in this last one, again, there is the first significant figure in this number. It's in the hundredths column. I put a box around it and I say, right, I want to chop that number there. So what I really want to do is I really want to write 0.04. Am I allowed to? No. The next digit is 5 or more. It means I have to round up to a 0.05. So I guess the key points of rounding to one significant figure are: find your first significant figure, your first non-zero digit. Okay, and if you look here in all these questions, I've underlined it every time. The first non-zero digit of your number. And then simply round to that accuracy. So if the first non-zero digit is in the thousands column, round to the nearest thousand. If the first non-zero digit is in the tenths column, round to the nearest tenth.